script, I'd had visions of Seinfeldian contracts dancing in my head. I'd already mentally bought my beach house in Malibu, complete with his and hers Jaguars for me and my husband. Not that I had a husband, but I was sure I'd pick one up along the way. All of which explains why I was in a jolly mood that morning as I drove past the wino sunning himself at the studio gates and onto the Miracle lot. I pulled up in front of the guard booth, where an ancient man with rheumy eyes and the unlikely name of Skippy asked me where I was headed. "Muffy and me," I grinned. Was it my imagination, or did I see a trace of pity in those rheumy old eyes? "Park over there," he said, waving to a tiny spot next to the commissary dumpster. I parked my trusty Corolla in the shadow of the dumpster and stepped out onto the lot, trying to ignore the smell of rotting garbage. Swinging my brand-new attaché case, I headed over to the office I was to share with Kandi, eager to start on this exciting new chapter of my life. Somehow, it still didn't seem real. I had to keep reminding myself that I actually had a job at Miracle Studios. Of course, I didn't know it at the time, but the real miracle was that I'd live to tell about it. Chapter 2. My friend Kandi has been a comedy writer, a waitress, and a part-time sales clerk at Bloomingdale's. But never, as far as I know, has she been a physician. Which is why, when I walked into her office that Monday morning, I was surprised to see her with a stethoscope dangling from her neck, the earpiece pressed up against the wall. "What are you doing?" "Listening to Stan and Audrey." Stan and Audrey Miller were the head writers on Muffy and Me. I'd met with them when I first got my script assignment. They'd ushered me into their office and told me how much they'd liked my story outline, how the Cinderella thing really worked for them, and how they just wanted to suggest one or two teeny-tiny changes. 3 hours later, they'd totally ripped my story apart and put it back together again. But I'd walked out with an assignment, and that was all I cared about. Now here I was, in an office next to theirs, watching Kandi eavesdropping on them with a stethoscope. "Where did you get that thing?" I asked. "The prop department. It works like a dream. Want to try?" "No, thanks. I prefer to do my eavesdropping at X-rated motels." Kandi ignored my sarcasm. "It's a great way to find out the latest dirt," she said. "Who's getting hired, who's getting fired, who's getting laid." "Well, what's happening?" Same old, same old. Audrey's accusing Stan of being an alcoholic, and he's accusing her of being a frigid bitch." Apparently nobody was getting laid in that relationship. Kandi took off the stethoscope and tossed it onto her desk. "So," she said, gesturing around the room, "what do you think?" Now, I'm sure most people would assume that Hollywood sitcom writers have snazzy offices with plush carpeting and sleek teak furniture. Most people would be wrong. Kandi's office was a closet-sized affair, with stained brown carpeting and a dusty window overlooking the transvestites on Santa Monica Boulevard. "Early hellhole?" I sighed, gazing at an ominous brown stain on the carpet. I didn't even want to think where that stain came from. "That's your desk," Kandi said, pointing to a desk that was probably around in Fatty Arbuckle's day. I was just about to plop down into the swivel chair in front of it when Kandi cried, "Stop!" She reached into her drawer and pulled out a towel. "Miracle Studios rule number 1, never sit on unprotected furniture." She draped the towel on the chair seat. "I'm not kidding. The wardrobe lady swears she got a yeast infection from her chair." I sat down gingerly and glanced over at a tennis racket propped up in the corner of the room. "Do you actually have time to play tennis?" "Nah, that's for scaring away the rats." Obviously, this job was going to be a tad less glamorous than I'd thought. Kandi took out her cosmetics case and started putting on lipstick without a mirror, along with comedy writing and making margaritas, one of her major life skills. "You ready for the big day?" she asked through puckered lips. A frisson of fear shot through me. Today was the Monday morning read-through, a quaint sitcom ritual where the actors gather round, bleary-eyed from a weekend of debauchery,